So Omar Mateen, the Orlando Massacre, or let's call it a massacre. Just saying it's a shooting. No, it was a massacre. It was shooting fish in a barrel. So Omar Mateen, the shooter of the perpetrator of the Orlando Massacre, he is to be blamed for that killing. He is to be blamed, not the gun, not this, there, that, or whatever. Omar Mateen is to be blamed. Now, we're going to find out who, what was he made up of? What kind of human being was this, and how could we have prevented it from happening? So, that being said, since we're social creatures, and to only blame the father is sexist. To only blame the homophobic father, which he is, and he has a part of the blame. He created the son. He couldn't show him affection. He's a homophobic piece of shit. The son wants to appeal to him. Look, Dad, I'm ISIS. You love me now? Look, Dad, I killed all these gay people. You love me now? You could have talked to him. You could have talked to him, Omar's father, and you could have been decent. But you didn't do that, okay? But to only blame the father, I heard Jink Ugar, I heard him blaming the father. I think that's sexist as well. That's homophobic as well. Only men are to blame. Only put it at the man's feet. What about Omar's mother? What about his own wife? They're not adults. They don't take responsibility for their own behavior. They're being dutiful and obedient Muslim women. So, poor pitiful creatures. Let's just let them get away with their bigotry and hatred and their homophobia. They're just doing what their husband's saying. They don't have any control over their own behavior. They're just pitiful, pathetic little creatures. No, I think that's bullshit. They are adults. They should have known better too. And they're homophobic pieces of shit just like the father is. Look at that. Remember that crazy woman in Florida? She was calling them Brazilian guys. She was like, and you're a pedophile, and you suck his dick, and you suck his dick, and you're videotaping the planes to remind you of 9/11, and you don't love Middle Easterns. I love God. You don't love God. You don't love Middle Easterners. Remember that? Remember that fucking insanity? If you're a woman, would you stand for that? Would you sit there and just let somebody yell at you and accuse you of all this crazy ass shit? And it's wasting your time, and it's like, where the fuck is this coming from? It was totally insane. But why was that acceptable? Did she get any charges? Those are some, first, the homosexual allegations, that's robbing of their manhood. The pedophile allegations, that's pretty some serious shit right there. Them being terrorists, that's a serious fucking allegations right there. So, she's allowed to just fucking throw any allegations out of fucking nowhere just because? That's insane, man. It's not okay. If you were a woman, you wouldn't have tolerated that shit. You would not have accepted that. Letting a woman yell at you all belligerently. And maybe you would have. I don't know. Maybe you're just, I'd rather hurt myself than other people. But then I think you need to get a little backbone and stand up for yourself too. You're an adult, right? It's supposed to respect you and to treat you just like anybody else. But then as soon as shit hits the fan, all of a sudden you're like a little child. We're going to try, 16-year-old boys who do heinous crimes as adults, but grown-ass women, we're going to pretend that they're children and they don't understand, like, well, she did live with him for 5 years. She got comfortable. She got used to a sitting around the couch kind of lifestyle. Let's give her some alimony. Get the fuck out of here. The contract between marriage, whatever you want to say the contract is, okay? If it's, you're pretty, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to get a job, and then you just stay loyal to me and you make me happy. If that's the fucking contract, well, if you divorce me, you're not making me happy no more. So if you divorce me, why do I got to still pay you? You're not making me happy, so what the fuck am I giving you money for? Why am I busting my ass to give you money? Alimony's bullshit. I don't know if you got that out of what I'm saying, but that is bullshit. Okay, so I know if you're a woman, you wouldn't actually take that bullshit. It's also, I think about like when some people say, well, real men don't hit women. Real men don't hit women. And I understand the sentiments. I understand the sentiments as a woman is smaller and therefore weaker, smaller and weaker, so a bigger person, animal thing, whatever, shouldn't hurt a smaller thing, which would go towards child abuse. Don't hit children. But I don't know, some people say don't hit women, and then the women turn around and hit the kids. What's the difference? And the woman I was arguing with, she said, I'm just as big and tough as any man out here. Okay, then why do we only say men shouldn't hit women? If you're just as tough, if you're equally as tough as any man out here, then why do we say men shouldn't hit women? If you're equally as tough, then you shouldn't hit men. Women shouldn't hit men shouldn't hit women, children shouldn't hit people, adults shouldn't hit children. Nobody should be hitting anybody. It's not men shouldn't be hitting women, real men shouldn't hit women. Real humans who are decent, real decent human beings don't hit anybody. And, you know, like, you have a right to self-defense too. So if a woman's coming after me, I'm not going to just clock her. But, you know, I don't know. I think that's actually a little bit scarier of a situation, because if she's coming at me, I don't know how to really defend myself. I know proportionally hold her wrist or something and throw her down, but I think that the throat is very vulnerable. She could pull a trigger just as easy as anybody else. So she's really vindictive and she wants to hurt you so badly. That is not something we should tolerate. Violence at all. Violence is one of the worst crimes out here. Rape, murder, stealing. I mean, violence is worse than stealing, isn't it? So, nobody should be hitting anybody, but that saying, real men don't hit women, we're only concerned about protecting the women. And why is that? In the Titanic, save the women and the children. When it comes to the selective service, only the men sign up for the selective service, because men are supposed to go out and fight and die, get their heads blown off. Who gives a shit about the men? They're supposed to fight and die. If you're protecting the men, if you're protecting the protectors, well, who's going to protect us? Maybe we should be protecting ourselves. There is no such thing as a liberator. The people must liberate themselves. Okay. So, Omar's wife drove him around to look at all these possible sites. And yet, there's only talk of arresting her. There's only talk. She hasn't been arrested. But if Omar's male Muslim buddy was driving him around to look at possible sites to attack, would there be any doubt in your mind that the FBI or the federal agencies would have already arrested him by now? Of course he would have been arrested. And so, you know, it's his wife, so I think there is a marital privilege there. But it's terrorism. And I think the reason why we're going to forgive her, why it seems like society isn't focusing on her, is she's, you know, a pitiful, dutiful, obedient wife. She was doing as her husband told her. She thought she was doing right by God in God's eyes. So she is forgiven. She gets a pass. So I think it's, you know, the sexism and the homophobia, I think they go hand in hand. There's a male and female part of us. There's like a male and female soul part of us. It's a Native American thing, but we all have female parts. Like if you want to be sexist, like women are caregivers and loving, and men are strong protectors. We all have both of those qualities in each one of us. And I think by trying to monopolize one or the other, then you take away, you know, men can't love, women can't protect. No, they can. And I think you're really taking away a lot from each other if you act like, you know, only one sex is better than the other. So, you have a senseless tragedy. You have all these dead bodies, friends, family of the victims. Bill O'Reilly's calling for war. Of course, that's what they want. War, war, war. Let's kill, kill, kill. We've only been at war for 15 years, but fuck it. Bill O'Reilly wants to use NATO to blow up ISIS, but Donald Trump is against NATO, so, you know, there's bloodlust. There's a thirst for revenge anytime this shit happens. And this is very similar to 9/11, right? 9/11, and we're angry, and we want to do something with that anger. So, what are we going to do? On 9/11, 3,000 Americans got attacked by 15 Saudi Arabian hijackers and 4 other guys from different countries. But 15 Saudi Arabian hijackers killed 3,000 Americans. They died in the attack. So, there's really no way to exact revenge upon anybody unless you want to go after those who helped them along the way, whether they knew what they were up to or not. Those who aided and abetted, like Saudi Arabia, right? No. Oops. No, we're not going to go after Saudi Arabia. We can't even sue Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is our ally, at least our government's allies. And the government of Saudi Arabia, the government of America, they're buddies. They're chopping people's heads off. They have horrible women's rights, horrible human rights abuses. There was actually something recently, the United Nations, according to Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN, they scrubbed Saudi Arabia off a list of those in the American-led coalition in Yemen who are killing children. So who's killing children in Yemen? Saudi Arabia is killing children in Yemen. But Saudi Arabia also gives a lot of money to the United Nations. So, hey, you need to let us kill some of the children in Yemen if you want some of this money. And so there's corruption. And actually, you know, good for Ban Ki-moon for actually pointing that out. So we didn't bomb Saudi Arabia, even though that was the place where the terrorists came from. In fact, we still protect them today. So we don't allow any of the victims of 9/11 to have the capacity to sue them for any culpability Saudi Arabia may have had in the 9/11 attacks. And then they also got away from this child killing list in Yemen. So we got, you know, America's bombing people in Yemen, and Saudi Arabia is there killing children. They were on a list, but now we're going to just turn our heads to it. Why? Because the United Nations, they provide lots of food and money to lots of different other countries. They could use that $500 million of the Saudi Arabian royal kings and queens and princesses. So since they give us some money, they also give Hillary Clinton a bunch of her money. I heard she get like 20%. There's one report that she got 20% of her money came from Saudi Arabia. But that was the mentality, right? The people who flew the planes into the buildings are dead, but we're pissed. We got to blame somebody. Let's kill 1 million people in Iraq. Let's invade Afghanistan and set up an occupation there, even though Afghanistan is the destroyer of empires. It took down the Soviet Union. It took down, I don't know, Mongolians maybe, or Romans. I don't know. They took down, they're the destroyer of empires. Anybody that goes into Afghanistan and tries to conquer that mountainous region eventually bankrupts themselves, and then they're an empire no more. We're still there 15 fucking years later. Bin Laden's dead. What are we still there for? What are we doing in Afghanistan? And then Bin Laden was in Pakistan. He might have started out in Afghanistan, but he's in Pakistan. So what the fuck were we doing like all those years? And he's dead. So like we got the main perpetrator. I don't like we sit. It's like Germany and Japan. Once we set a base up there, we don't ever fucking leave. So, you know, I'm looking at 9/11, the perpetrators, they died along with the attack, but we're pissed, so we had to blame somebody. You also have the G4S, the global security firm that Omar Mateen worked for. They're abusing and torturing Palestinian children and American children, abusing them sexually, physically, depriving them of necessary food and whatnot. And nobody says a word about that. That Omar Mateen was an American, born, raised, educated, employed here in the United States, part of the G4S, the largest security company in the world, the third largest private employer in the world, and they are just wrought with scandals all over the place, from Wackenhut to London to Palestine, just everywhere. They are just, you know, everywhere. In London, they weren't trained for the Olympics. And then, what about Tim McVeigh, okay? So think about how we reacted with 9/11, and then Tim McVeigh. How come we didn't react with Tim McVeigh the same way we did on 9/11? Tim McVeigh was raised in Lockport, New York. So why didn't we bomb New York? That's who aided and abetted Tim McVeigh, right? You got to invade the country that they came from. Or actually, let's see, we didn't invade Saudi Arabia. We invaded, what the fuck did we go to Iraq for? How was that? It wasn't connected to 9/11. So how did we, what the hell, like, what would be the comparison? Tim McVeigh blows up the Oklahoma City building, the Edward P. Muir, I don't know, that building, all right, the federal building. And instead of attacking New York, we would attack Kentucky because it's the central state or something. I don't know. But that's right. You got to go after those who are aiding and abetting. And Omar Mateen was born and raised in New York too. So Omar Mateen, educated and employed in Florida. Those are nation states who are harboring a known terrorist. So we need to invade these countries, right? Or these states. And then the folks who hired him, who accepted him into the police academy, the courthouse who gave him a job, who allowed him to touch everybody and frisk everybody, taking naked x-ray pictures. I don't know if they're TSA, but shaking everybody down, right? Giving him power over others. The closed gate community who hired him. They all should be held responsible for aiding and abetting a terrorist. If we use the same logic that we did on 9/11, then we should be bombing them. We should be invading them. Another connection between Tim McVeigh and Omar Mateen, they were both radicalized here in the United States. Tim McVeigh hated what happened in Waco, Texas, and so 1 year later, that's when he blew up the Oklahoma City building. But he'd got his training in the U.S. Army. That's who trained him. He was trained in the U.S. Army, and he fought in the first Iraq War under Daddy Bush. Tim McVeigh celebrated with his soldier buddies after he decapitated an Iraqi soldier with cannon fire on his first day of the war. So yeah, we decapitated a soldier. Timothy McVeigh was then shocked that he was being ordered to execute prisoners who were surrendering. Hands up, don't shoot. Now you got to execute them anyways. So who taught Tim McVeigh how to murder, how to kill? Who taught Tim McVeigh how to commit war crimes? When there was children that were found dead in that federal building, he said it was collateral damage. Well, that's exactly what we said when we invaded the Iraq again. Well, children died. Well, collateral damage. He said the exact same thing. So who radicalized Tim McVeigh? Our government did. Here in the U.S. And so anybody to say that, we need to invade the countries or the armed forces, or we need to go in and just start massacring everybody, just declare war, that you're insane. That's insane. That makes no fucking sense whatsoever. So in a similar vein, who trained Omar Mateen? And, I think some reforms within the system is called for. If you're being serious, if you're being serious about wanting to make this a better nation and a better country. Everybody wants to politicize this event. It's only one event out of, a bunch. When it comes to murders, only 8,000 people get shot every year. And it's a tragedy, don't get me wrong. But there's more people who die in car wrecks. There's more people who die with smoking and alcohol. And, so there's more people who die in other ways. And so, I don't know. I think that take away our freedoms, and then it's not as big of an issue as people think it is. In fact, I'm kind of like, that's the largest single shooting that we've ever had in American history. That's the largest one. I mean, that's kind of amazing. We've had a long Pax Americana. We've had a long peace in these United States. So the G4S, I think we should be focused on the G4S company, the global security company. That's who hired him. He had a clean background. He had a clear background check. He was able to get his gun, his assault rifle, because he was a security guard. So, and because he has a security guard, he was able to get his state license. And so, therefore, he's a part of the machine. And since he is a part of the machine, there's absolutely no way you can keep the people in the machine from getting their hands on weapons. There's no fucking way you can prevent them from getting their hands on weapons. If you're just saying the people can't have weapons, but the machine can have weapons, and Omar Mateen could have got every single weapon. There's almost no legislation that you could have passed to make sure Omar Mateen didn't get his hands on a weapon. There's no fucking way. He was G4S. He was a G. And if you become a G, that's you're the man. It's the largest, it's a global security company headquartered in London, Jupiter, Florida, operating in over 100 countries. G4S is the third largest private employer in the world. And I think that him working for G4S is a point that should never be let go. It should never be let go. We're sitting there saying, let's punish the people, but he wasn't the people. He was the military. And so I think that's, I don't know. I was saying before, we don't want to invade. We don't want to bomb everybody. But should the U.S. Army not have been teaching Tim McVeigh to decapitate and to celebrate a decapitation than to kill surrendering prisoners? Couldn't we have taught some compassion, some love? Or are we just stoic killers? We're at war for 15 years now. We're still at war for 15 years. We're able to lick the fucking British in 7 years. We fucked up the Nazis in 4 years. We took on the Confederates in 4 years, but when it comes to, terror? The idea of terror? War is terror. War is massive terror. So, being a war society, we're shown that, might is right, and it's okay to go around shooting people. So I'm going to have to cut this short. Still not finished. But don't forget about G4S. They have scandals all over the world. Prisoner abuse in Palestine, raping children in juvenile detentures here in the United States. The oppressor molesters don't give a shit about us. They're fascist assholes and they're sadistic and they only like to see us in pain. So if we tried to have a softer, sensitive side to us, then we could prevent some of this stuff from happening. So they're also the company that protects our nuclear weapons. You know?